truck base, you'll win the race.
You're listening to Trucking Tomorrow, your go-to podcast for exploring and understanding the future of trucking from a carrier's perspective. In each episode, we sit down with industry veterans to discuss what it takes to grow your trucking company in today's world. So let's hit the road with Trucking Tomorrow. Here's your host, Brian Jones.
Welcome to Trucking Tomorrow. I'm your host, Brian Jones, and I'm joined today by Jason Reeves, the president of Colville, Inc., which is an Arctic logistics provider on Alaska's North Slope. Prior to Colville, Jason has a diverse background in energy management and leading companies in Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. I met Jason earlier this year at the Mid-America Trucking Show. He and his whole team were down there, meeting folks, shaking hands. They were the life of the party, so to speak. So, Jason, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite, Brian. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Just to kick things off, I love Colville's story and history. Do you mind just giving a quick overview of Colville, how long you guys been around, what you guys do, and the uniqueness of your operation up there?
Yeah, absolutely. Colville does absolutely have an interesting, start and birth, if you will. Been a 40-year Alaska family-owned company. Mark Helmrichs is our original owner and our majority owner. And he and his family, his dad, actually started homesteading up there in the 40s and 50s. He was one of the first master hunting guides, and started flying people up to the North Slope for hunting, and then decided that they wanted to live literally at the top of the world. So Mark tells these amazing stories of dealing with polar bears and, with seals, and tells a funny story about how they had the only clothesline in like 50-mile radius, and it was the absolute magnet for every lost dog team in the region. So, I've never been dog sledding, but apparently you fall off quite often. And when you do, you're got to just chase your dogs. And, he would say, at 3 a.m., there'd be all, hell would break loose and dogs barking. And he'd go out there and there'd be a team tangled in the clothesline. And, about 8 hours later, here'd come the musher, across the tundra there to pick up his dogs. So, So anyway, so he's, from there, started off, hauling fuel and trash, and kind of grew it from that to where we are today. Today we've got a diverse business units, all kind of oil-based, huge fuel distribution. We have the only and largest, well, I guess it would be the largest, but it's the only storage, above ground storage tanks up there for refined fuels. We run an FBO, we run a hotel. We've got a brick and mortar, which I always say is kind of like Walmart on steroids. And then we've got a trucking group in Fairbanks, and then another trucking group down in Valdez. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
How does trucking fit into the overall operation? Because I know you guys are a relatively unique beast. Like, I think operating on the North Slope is probably just difficult and challenging to do anything there, I can imagine, but logistics is a big part of that. So how does trucking fit into everything else that's done at Colville?
Yeah, it's the lifeline of the North Slope, because there's a few stuff that's air cargoed in, but literally everything else has got to be hauled up the Dalton Highway, which goes from Fairbanks all the way to Prudhoe Bay, Dead Horse, Alaska, 1,000 some odd miles, dirt road, most of it covered in ice. As Ice Road Truckers was on the ads for a while. But yeah, people laugh. The oil comes down to the pipeline, gets refined, and all the fuel has to go back up to help, run the process. So it's a big loop there. But yeah, anything from, food to pipeline, pipes, frac sand, all of that literally has to be trucked from Fairbanks on up. So.
Interesting. Fuel comes down, but then goes back up on trucks, basically.
Yeah. The raw oil comes down, goes into refineries, gets turned into diesel and, jet and all that. And then we haul it back up. And then most of our company is up there. The largest percentage, got about 120 trucks that deliver fuel. So anywhere from spread fuelers, they're delivering it literally like in a gasoline, a station hose, to, a big B train that's delivering 15,000 gallons at a time. So
awesome. And are you guys only doing fuel, or are you moving other things as well? You mentioned equipment and other things. Like, do you have, flatbeds or anything like that, or what does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, we do. We've got flatbeds and reefers, and then some containers. We try and self-perform all of that work ourselves that we can. With the brick and mortar, all of that stuff has to come up, and we don't like getting Amazon our business, so we try and do all that. Laundry, food, all of that stuff has to come up. So we about 2 or 3 years ago started to self-perform that. So we have a warehouse now in Anchorage. We've got a freight forwarder relationship in Seattle. We're trying to kind of take that, all those logistical steps along the way in house. I guess is the way we're looking.
This may be a simple question, but will Amazon operate on the North Slope? Is that even an option all the way up there?
It is, yeah. It's yeah, you can order whatever you want up there, and
Interesting.
yeah, it ends up, it's not, prime the next day, but yeah, within 4 or 5 days, you can pretty much get whatever you want. So yeah, they're a big competitor for us.
Yeah, interesting. Good to know.
And then, we also run the only post office up there. So we get to see it all as it comes through. Okay.
I mean, in some ways, it seems life is only possible on the North Slope with Colville running all of the logistics to kind of get the things in and out, basically.
Yeah, certainly from a fuel standpoint, everything up there for the most part, probably 80% of the fuel, things that run on fuel are fueled by us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, given the uniqueness of the lane you guys run up there and the conditions, just curious for folks who aren't as familiar with what it takes to run trucks up there. In what ways is it different than running trucks, I'm on California, up and down I-5 in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
In what ways is it just the same? I'm curious how you might compare that for folks who aren't as familiar.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's a whole lot that's actually the same, but you know, um, it's definitely an independent. Most truckers are independent in general, right? And but you've got to just be more so of that, especially our transportation group. We got about 70 trucks and 50 some odd drivers that run the Dalton Highway for us. So, um, for one, that's one of the most deadly highways in the world. So they know every single aspect of that highway and how they're gonna, gear change. And uh, one of our drivers that I was up with, Charity, she would literally point and she was like, "This mile marker or this tree or this giant rock, if I can get there in the winter, I know, that's where I downshift. And here's how I attack this." Um, and then, you're in the middle of nowhere and it's -40, -50, and you have a blowout or, something happens with your truck. You need to be able to self-perform and survive. Um, so luckily it's a fairly well-traveled, highway. So you're not out there alone. Most companies will stop and help you. Colville, we have a reputation of being, if you are in trouble, flag a Colville truck down because we will always stop and help. So we pride ourselves on that part of our safety and our culture. But yeah, and then, up on the ice roads, it's different than an I-5 or an I-70 because you only go 20 miles an hour ever. So whether that's, and that's sometimes you can't even go that in the summers when the roads get bad, you're going 5 miles an hour.
Mm.
So you never have, speeding, really, or that kind of stuff. And then, we have e-logs coming out of Fairbanks, but up on the North Slope, it's all, 100-mile air radius and private road kind of running. So certainly different a little bit that way.
You mentioned the safety aspect of it. I'm curious how you've kind of cultivated or how Colville as a whole cultivates a culture of safety, whether it's around training or just general like processes. Like what does that look like, and how do you think about safety at Colville?
Yeah, we've got a pretty robust safety culture. It actually, so we came up last year. As one of the first things I did is uh, they were already doing, and I just joined. That was one of my first meetings. Was values, right? So what does it mean to be Colville, and what does the culture look like? And the two that came in, so we did the word salad and threw everything on the wall and came down with about six different words. And sent those out to our employees, and the survey came back, and family and safety were number 1 and 2. So huge, family owned. We've got, and the rotational aspect of our workers, a lot of them, are 3 on, 3 off. So they really do they spend 24 hours a day, 3 weeks in a row with pretty much the same people year in, year out. So they do become a family. And part of that is, wanting to keep your family safe. So we take that to heart. We haul fuel in a very, environmentally sensitive area. So we want to be good stewards of the environment and pride ourselves on doing that. So we take a huge kind of monetary hit on safety training. So we, like a transport driver going up to Dalton, they will run probably for almost 3 months with somebody. The first, probably 4 or 5 trips will be in the seat next to them. So me as an owner, right, I'm paying for 2 drivers to be in a truck, but they really get to learn that, and we typically don't hire people without a lot of experience, but we make them ride with our drivers. Then they follow behind a driver, for another, month or 2. We got a 30, 60, 90 review. Each one of those has to be signed off by their supervisor and the safety group. We do a big safety onboarding here in Anchorage for everybody that comes in, and then daily toolboxes and a weekly safety meeting at each group. And whether that's, our folks that are cooking your breakfast, or, the ones that are, getting your parts bins filled, or the people behind a wheel, it's kind of an all encompassing kind of aspect to it.
So unique to have an experienced driver come in and then have months before they're running solo on that lane up there. How does that work with new folks that are coming in? Is that generally folks have know what to expect, and drivers like, this is kind of this is what I'm signing up for, or is there any sort of like coaching or training on the recruiting side to bring new folks in? Because I imagine it's, if you're hiring experienced drivers and go back and do months of training when they're coming in, is probably unique to what you guys do.
Yeah, they've it absolutely is, and it's kind of both, right? So our transport division, which is hauling up and down the Dalton, those folks just know that's Colville's culture, right? And from a driver's standpoint, you're still getting paid. So whether you're behind the wheel or not, kind of indifferent to you, and you're learning, kind of the Colville way of running the Dalton for us. Experienced folks up on the slope, sometimes they don't have as much experience. So a lot of it is new to them, or they've got trucking experience, but they've never, been up on the ice roads. So it's a little bit, different and new. And, we like people that are kind of naturally hesitant and risk averse and want that training, right? The guy who just knows it all and jumps behind the wheel can be a little scary for us at times. So we do a lot in our interview process. So we ask culture-based questions and, try and really cultivate that family culture safety aspect, so they know when they come that that's our expectation.
Yeah. I know we talked about this a bit when we were in Louisville at Matt's, but how do you think about hiring and, recruiting drivers, given I think a lot of your operations are seasonal, and what does that look like on the hiring and staffing side?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult up here. There's tons of work, and there's just not a lot of people. So there's a lot of, not really transient, but the rotational type workers up here. Colville started about a year or 2 ago, going down to lower 48, which is an Alaskan term for the rest of the U.S., and trying to recruit from down there. And it's actually been wildly successful the last 2 years. We're just trying to get people to even think about, Alaska, which is kind of our pitch. So people will walk by and like, hey, do you want to drive in Alaska? They're like, oh no, I'd never do that. But tell me about it. And we start to tell them, all the benefits, and, you can work half a year and make, pretty much a full year salary, and 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. And, if you really do like your work-life balance, I mean, that's, for a lot of people, it makes a lot of sense. So, we really, try and we push our culture and our safety aspect, and then the uniqueness of, you're going to run in parts of Alaska you never really see before. We get to see wildlife and, interesting people, that kind of stuff. So.
I'm curious from a driver's perspective, what's the most common draw for folks? Is it the pay is great to work half a year to get a full year's salary? Is it the nature, like in your experience, like what is the biggest pitch or draw for drivers coming from the lower 48 to work up there?
Yeah, mainly it's the rotational lifestyle and the pay.
Yeah.
And the Alaska part is kind of the icing on the cake. But the rotational lifestyle isn't for everybody. The guy who wants to run, the Walmart run and be home every night at 5, that's great. We need those folks. Uh, but that person doesn't really want to be gone for 3 weeks at a time. So you need, that person who really values the 3 weeks that they're off, right? They're not answering emails, they're not answering phone calls. There's none of that. So you really can enjoy your family for, literally half the year where, everyone else is 52 weekends, right? So it's that kind of mindset that really, draws and keeps people. There's folks that have been doing a rotational work up here for 20, 30 years.
I know you just joined the team at Colville within the last couple of years, so you're relatively new there relative to the long history of the company. So I'm curious, since the time you've been there, what's been your biggest surprise or learning joining a team with so much history?
Um, yeah, there's been a lot. One, I never even thought I'd live in Alaska, much less, or visit Alaska, much less live up here. So the Alaska aspect, is great, and the culture and the pride that folks have up here is really cool. Colville has done a great job of cultivating leaders inside the company. I think 96% of the senior leadership has been here almost their entire career. So it's pretty unheard of in lower 48 for sure. To really invest in people. And again, we play the long game, right? Part of our great game of business aspect, which is a open income statement kind of management style, where we show the books to all our employees and really talk about how individual decisions can impact the bottom line. And then we share that bottom line with everybody. But yeah, so we invest in the long haul. And part of that is, when oil craters, which it will, sometime in the next 10 years, we don't want to be the company that's, our balance sheet's out of whack, too much debt. We paid people way too much, and now we got to let everybody, we've hired too many people and we got to lay everybody off. So we really do kind of pitch the long game kind of aspect to all of that. And that's been, been interesting for me. I've been lower 48, mid-sized public companies. It's just a different mindset. So that's really been exciting to be a part of.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know we've talked a little bit about previously the importance of numbers and management and really just knowing the numbers across the business. However, you guys are in a unique place, right? Where you're operating in your customers in some ways, another part of the business a lot of times, and you're investing a ton in safety that's unique to you. So how do you think about, profitability and efficiency, and then balancing that with other kind of atypical demands on the business you might have, whether it's other aspects of the operation or safety and so on?
Yeah, I think, we try and just take a balanced look at it. Obviously with the great game of business for us, the entire company is looking at the income statement and talking about the numbers every week. So, it really gives us a great vantage point for people to already know kind of, hey, here are the headwinds or the tailwinds that we have. And then in that, we talk about, okay, here's where we are, here's what we're projecting for the end of the month. And we talk about whatever issues have come up or, things that we're going to have to flex around. And we do a lot of winter planning to kind of have a game plan going in, a base of operations to move around. So it's really those two. It's our winter plan going in, and then the great game of business allows us to discuss, those pitfalls or headwinds that inevitably are going to arise.
Yeah. It's a somewhat unique way of operating, to be transparent with the entire team. And you mentioned that allows decisions to be elevated. Curious if you have any examples you can share around how that transparency led to a decision or recommendation from someone on the team that may not have been possible or as quick to come to fruition without that visibility.
Yeah. So last year, we were going through a ton of trailer tires and we couldn't quite figure out what the heck was going on. And, when it's -80, your trailer tires will kind of freeze up if you don't, warm everything up in time. Um, so yeah, we saw our trailer expense line just kept climbing and climbing and climbing. We're like, what is going on? So leadership went in and figured out, what the cause was, talked about it in Great Game of Business and said, hey, if this continues, for every set of tires that we have to do, it's X amount of gallons more that we have to sell. Right. So it kind of equated that to something that everybody's familiar with in that group. And then we made a game out of it. We said, okay, if we can cut it, 10%, each week for the next 4 weeks, back to where it should be, then yeah, I think we gave everybody a pizza party or something like that. So it's that kind of stuff that, normally just is missed, right? From an employee standpoint, trying to think if the other one, here recently we had a customer call and, they wanted, X, Y, and Z done in 3 days. So luckily it was happened on a Friday and we have our company-wide meetings on Monday. So we brought it up and, kind of game planned of, hey, this is additional revenue that if we say no to, we're going to miss. So how do we maximize that? Had people that were willing to work over. So if you're a rotational worker, and typically it's 3 weeks on, 3 weeks off. But if we have the demand for it, we'll do workovers. So you may stay your 4th or 5th week. We've got guidelines around the maximum amount of time you can stay without going home. But yeah, so people are like, heck yeah, I'll help the company out. And which means, they're calling their wife and they're saying, hey, I'm not coming home this week. I'll come home next week. And, that cuts into their family time. So you got to have that, right balance. But anyway, it's that kind of discussion that, it comes from that kind of management style.
Yeah. And it sounds like the family focus is an important aspect of that. Right? If you didn't have that, then it leads to burnout or something like that with family focus. Well, kind of wrapping up and shifting to more forward looking. I know in our prior conversations, you're always thinking about how we can improve and thinking about the future. And I'm curious from where you sit, kind of coming in, how do you stay smart and connected to different trends or opportunities for innovation and bringing in and taking the operations to the next level? Like, how do you educate yourself on what's available and what the future should look like for you guys? Cool.
Yeah. One's just scouring the internet, right, and trying to figure out kind of what the new is. Different podcasts and that kind of stuff. And then really it's, I've got a business group here that I'm a member of. The Great Game of Business does a great job of putting companies together regionally and product wise. So, we get together probably about quarterly and just kind of talk about, hey, here's what I'm saying, or here's what I'm doing. Just had a big conference this past month. There was probably 1,500 people there, and 300 of them are in the oil and gas transportation business. So really great contacts, really, just kind of word of mouth of, hey, this works for me, or how did you do this? That kind of stuff. So
very tactical.
Nothing overly scientific, but, just trying to be thorough and, I'm always trying to get better and educate myself, work smarter, not harder.
It's having the person you can call. Like, hey, you saw this last year. What did you guys do in this situation?
Yeah, we've got a big, we kind of alluded to it, our seasonal workers. We're going to be looking for almost 50 CDL drivers this winter. Wow. So, how do we manage that, and how do we get out in front of people? And, so we worked a lot on our social media presence. We've hired a company to help us there. And so.
Very cool. Well, my last question for you is, this is trucking tomorrow. So as you look towards tomorrow, the next year at Colville, what are your top priorities? Like top 1 to 3 things for the next year for you guys?
Yeah. So, we see probably the next 5 years being extremely robust up here. It's an There's about $16 billion worth of announced projects. And 5 years is a very conservative look. And that's kind of irrelevant of who's in the White House and what really the economy does.
Mhm.
So anyway, so we're going to be in this need to hire people. So my big push for this next year is of these seasonal folks, how can I incentivize them or get them accustomed to our culture to want to come back and really be a part of this on a year basis. So you get a lot of folks that are summer hunting and fishing guides, and they do that, kind of do their own thing, or they go back to their family farms, and then so that'll be the big push. The other one for us, we're implementing NetSuite as our ERP system. And there's a lot of kind of stuff that'll cabbage onto that. Our safety EHS system, we use Fleetio for transportation maintenance. We're a Samsara company from video and e-logs. All of that can implement, or can integrate to NetSuite. So really being able to look at a dashboard and see a lot of good data is my other personal push. And then, part of that is to get out of some of the spreadsheets that we do now, right? Really trying to, we've got so much work coming. If I can automate it and not have to hire additional people, then, it just makes us that more efficient. More goes to the bottom line. So trying to do more with the amount of people that we have now.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked about previously is just knowing those numbers and having cohesive visibility just allows you to operate better and more safely when you know how all the pieces fit together, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't make, wise decisions if you don't have wise information.
Exactly. Which is harder to do than it seems, actually, for a lot of companies.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Yeah. Yeah. You're somewhat operating in a vacuum at times and making decisions on not the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason, I really appreciate taking the time to speak with me here, hopping on the show. I know you're busy, but thank you for joining the show here.
Yeah, Brian, appreciate it. Look forward to our next couple talks.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, see ya.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Trucking Tomorrow. The show notes include links to any resources mentioned in today's show. And if you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and leave us a 5-star review.
Truck base, you're always tough.